Hi, it's Wednesday, and that means it's time for another video edition of Widower Wednesday. I'm Abel Keogh, author of the book Dating a Widower, and today we're talking about something a lot of men and women who are dating widows and widowers secretly worried about. Are they being used by them? Now, this topic comes from a viewer who asked, Abel, what are the signs that a widow or widower is using me? It's a great question, and one I've heard many times, because when you're dating a widow or widower, especially one who hasn't fully healed or moved on, there's a real risk that you're not in a mutual committed relationship, just filling a void. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 signs that might mean you're being used by a widow or widower. And if any of these hit close to home, don't ignore them. Your next step is to talk to the widow or widower about what you're seeing and how it makes you feel. If he or she is willing to make changes, that's great, and you can probably work through any of these problems. But if not, it's probably time to reconsider the relationship and move on. All right, let's get into it. The first sign that a widow or widower may be using you is that you feel like you're competing with a ghost. If they always bring up the late spouse, how he or she handled things, how he or she made them feel, or how perfect he or she was, they're stuck in the past, and you are probably along for the ride. Instead of focusing on building a future with you, they're emotionally anchored to their previous life, and obviously you're going to feel like you're being compared to someone who's no longer there. And if that's the case, it's a sign that you're not being seen as a full independent partner and that you're just a stand-in. And that's not love, by the way. That's a lot of emotional baggage. The second sign that a widow or widower may be using you is that they're not willing to build new memories or traditions together with you. Now, if everything still revolves around their late spouse, like their house hasn't changed much, they vacation in the same places they did with the late spouse, they celebrate holidays exactly the same way they did when the late spouse was alive, and then you suggest doing something different or altering the routine, and they brush it off or flat out refuse, yeah, probably a sign they're stuck in the past. Because the truth is, if they're not willing to create new memories or build a new life with you, they really don't want a relationship. They just want you to step into the one they already had, and they're really not building anything with you. They're just plugging you into a life that hasn't moved on. That's a no-win situation for anyone, by the way. Now, the third sign that a widow or widower may be using you is they only want a physical relationship or practical companionship. So if you're always available when they need comfort or someone to talk to, if help around the house, maybe help with their kids or want some physical connection. But then when you need support, or emotional support, or even just them to step up and maybe lead the relationship for a minute and they don't do it, it's crickets, and the relationship is beginning to feel one-sided, that's a sign you're probably being used. If you give and give, but there's very little coming back in your way, and if you feel like you're being emotionally drained while they're getting everything that they want, you're really not in a relationship. You're being used as a support system or a therapist, and that's not good either. The fourth sign that a widow or widower may be using you is that you're kept separate from his friends and family. So if you've been dating for a while, maybe months or even longer, and you're exclusive, but you're still not meeting their friends, their kids, the important people in their life, their family, or if you have met them and it's been kind of casual surface level, and you're clearly being kept at a distance from them, that's a red flag. If a widow or widower is serious about you, they'll want to integrate you into their world, but if you're being hidden, sidelined, or treated like some secret, especially when they had no trouble introducing people to their late spouse, that's a sign that you're not being treated as a real partner and you're really not in their life, you're just next to it. Now, the fifth sign that a widow or widower is using you is that they use grief to manipulate you. Anytime you bring up your needs, boundaries, or feelings, they turn the conversation back to their pain. They use grief as a shield to avoid accountability or to shut down difficult conversations or to make you feel guilty for asking for more or even setting boundaries. Now, I understand that grief is real, but it's not a free pass to treat someone poorly. If they're using their loss to justify emotional neglect or disrespect, they're not in a place to love someone else, and they're obviously not working through their grief in a healthy way. So the odds are you're being used, and they're using grief in order to avoid moving forward and having a real relationship. Now, the sixth sign that a widow or widower may be using you is that they won't talk about the future. So if you talk about moving in, marriage, or even long-term plans, those come up. If they shut it down by saying something like, now's not the right time, or let's just see where this goes, what that really means is that they're not planning a future with you. And if a widow or widower can't imagine a future with you, or they avoid every opportunity to talk about it, it's because they haven't put you there. Now, you might be meeting their present day needs, but they're not investing in a long-term life or future together. And the relationship's not about love, it's really about convenience. Now, the seventh sign that a widow or widower is using you is that you're not treated as an equal partner in the relationship. So if you're the one who's constantly adjusting your schedule, your expectations, and your emotional needs, all to keep the relationship going, and you find yourself, you're the one that's doing all the compromising and accommodating and doing all the work, and that their needs come first, their grief come first, their comfort come first, and over time you're feeling more like a caretaker or just kind of a stand-in instead of a partner, yeah, they're probably using you, because a real relationship is mutual, and if you're always bending while they stand, then yes, you're being taken advantage of. If you see any of these signs, if you recognize one or more of these signs in your relationship, don't ignore it, bring it up, talk through it, and see what they do with that conversation. If they take responsibility and start making changes, you've got something to work with. And again, any of these challenges can be worked through. But if they get defensive or dismissive or nothing changes, it's probably time to walk away, because you deserve someone who's all in, someone who's not stuck in the past and using grief as a crutch and not looking to fill the spouse-shaped void in their heart. So you deserve someone who's all in and can make you number one and make you a priority in their life. I'm Abel Keogh, author of the book Dating a Widower. If you see other signs that you're being used by a widower, go ahead and drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And I'll see you all next Wednesday with more advice on navigating relationships with widows and widowers.